laying on the hammer to the Minnesota Timberwolves, and Victor Wembanyama really coming back and making a difference in this game. We can go back to the first 6 minutes because I keep pointing to it. He had 16 points, guys, and 5 rebounds. Before we looked up, he was sitting down on the bench and he had already made a statement.
2 nights ago, Victor Wembanyama walked off the floor in Minneapolis.
All the criteria has been upgraded to a flagrant foul penalty 2. Wembanyama's been ejected.
With 4 points and the entire Target Center chanting, "Kick him out," while the rest reviewed the elbow on Naz Reid before hitting Wemby with a flagrant 2. Probably the lowest moment of his career so far. But last night, he opened Game 5 with 18 points in the first quarter, finished with 27, 17, 5 and 3, and the Spurs won by 29. And just like that, a little reminder of what the alien from France is actually capable of. A reminder of the guy who put up a 12-block triple-double in Game 1, the guy who hung 39, 15 and 5 in Game 3, the unanimous Defensive Player of the Year, the guy who's been the best player on the floor for most of this series. The Wolves spent 48 hours convincing themselves they had a blueprint. Wemby spent 33 minutes last night ripping it up. And the one stat that explains all of it, the number that should genuinely scare Minnesota walking into Game 6, isn't the 27 points. It isn't the 17 rebounds. It's a much smaller number than that, but we'll get to it. But before any of that, we need to start where the story actually starts, not with the ejection, with what Minnesota was telling themselves walking into Game 5. Here's the thing about Game 4. Not only was it a loss for the Spurs, it became a theory. After Wemby got ejected with over 8 minutes left in the second quarter, the entire conversation around this series shifted. Suddenly, the Wolves had a formula. Suddenly, Wemby looked solvable. Maybe he wasn't ready for this kind of postseason pressure. Can Wemby handle the physicality of playoff basketball? And look, I get why people leaned into it. Things looked rough. Wemby asked Harrison Barnes, "What does that mean?" when the penalty got announced. He'd never been ejected before. He finished with 4 points in 13 minutes, the fewest he's ever scored in a game, period. Minnesota turned around and won 114 to 109 to tie the series. Spurs coach Mitch Johnson said after Game 4, Minnesota was trying to impose physicality on Wemby every single play, every single part of the floor, constantly grabbing his arms and jersey and dishing elbows to his body. Darren Fox said Wemby's left arm was being held on the rebound that led to the elbow. Dylan Harper said it looked like Wemby was just trying to protect himself after being grabbed all night. So when you back up and look at the whole series, the Wolves aren't trying to outskill San Antonio, they're trying to out-physical them. McDaniels and Reid swarm on every rebound, Gobert sitting at the rim, constant body contact in transition. The whole idea was to make every possession uncomfortable and see if a 22-year-old in his first real playoff series would crack.
Bryant off of the 3, Wembanyama engulfs the rebound.
Oh, that's an elbow. That's going to be an elbow by Victor.
And we got a tie with McDaniels.
And in Game 4, it worked. One time. And the Wolves walked into Game 5 thinking they'd found a repeatable plan. You could feel it in the early minutes. Minnesota came out physical again. They were running the same playbook. The Spurs crowd was loud, but the Wolves wanted Wemby to feel that Game 4 still hanging over him. 18 points later, and that conversation was over. 6 for 8 from the field, 2 for 3 from 3. Inside the first 12 minutes, the Game 4 formula looked obsolete before the first quarter ended.
Wembanyama, shades of Jay crossover right here, the little spin move.
Now let's sit with that for a second, because if you're Chris Finch, this is the moment you start to panic. You've spent the series building a defensive plan, and it looks like you might have got it figured out. Then Wemby drops 18 in the first quarter alone, and you find out real quick what happens when you poke the alien. The Wolves thought they had Wemby. The first quarter alone said otherwise. And honestly, that would have been enough for most bounce-back videos. But the actual reminder didn't come from the scoring. It came about 10 minutes later, the exact moment Minnesota tried to run the Game 4 play one more time. About 2.5 minutes left in the first half. Minnesota's at the line, and Naz Reid shoves Wemby in the back during a free throw. Picks up a technical.
And Jamal kind of highlighted this. It starts with Anthony Edwards. He's got to get off the ball quicker. I think this is going to be a technical foul on Naz Reid or...
This is the moment, I'm telling you. This is the entire video. Because what Reid did right there is the same kind of contact that triggered the Game 4 ejection. Different play, same idea. Make it physical, make Wemby react. Minnesota was checking to see if the lesson stuck. They were running it back to see if the Game 4 was a glitch or a pattern. And here's where Wemby answered them. He didn't say anything to Reed, channeled his inner monk, went to the line, knocked down the free throw, and got back to work. The message was clear without him saying a word. You can push me, you can grab me, you can talk. I'm going to keep playing basketball and I'm going to win. Quick word from the sponsor of today's video, Prize Picks, and the timing could not be better because the NBA playoffs are underway, and if you know you can play responsibly and have the means to do so, then Prize Picks is America's #1 sports pick app, and honestly, the easiest way to win a little extra cash while you're already locked into playoff basketball. Here's the deal, it's stupid simple. You pick more or less on a few players' stats, lock in your lineup, done. No spreads, no math degree required. And if you're new, use code HMA, play your first $5 lineup, and they'll drop $50 in lineups into your account. Links pinned in the description. Prize Picks is available in most states, including California, Texas, and Florida. So if you want to get in on the playoff action, head to the link in the description, sign up with code HMA, drop a $5 lineup, and Prize Picks will give you $50 in lineups to play with. Let's eat. Now here's the stat I mentioned at the start. The one Minnesota should actually be worried about. 1. That's how many personal fouls Wemby committed in 33 minutes. 1. And to really understand what that number means, you have to understand what Minnesota was doing to him all night. The Wolves were grabbing, pushing, bumping him every time he tried to set up in the post, holding his arms on rebounds, bodying him in transition. Reed told him to get in the weight room after muscling him on a layup. Dosunmu was jawing at him. McDaniels was leaning on him every possession. This was the exact same physical environment that got him ejected 48 hours earlier. Same opponent, same tactics, same pressure points. The Wolves were practically begging him to swing back, but he didn't. 33 minutes of getting grabbed, pushed, and talked at, and Wemby walked away with one personal foul. That's a guy who blocks out the noise and the pressure and plays his own game and lets the scoreboard do the talking. This was controlled. The kind of game you put on when you're trying to teach a young player how to handle adversity without losing his head. Wemby got hot, sure. The Wolves fired him up, sure. But every time the temperature rose, he just put the ball in the basket, grabbed a rebound, or kicked it out to a shooter. This is why I keep coming back to the word reminder. Because what he reminded the Wolves of wasn't his scoring. They knew he could score. They've seen 39 points already this series. What he reminded them of was that this version of him they saw in Game 4, the frustrated, ejectable version, isn't who he actually is. That was the exception. This is who he is. Unanimous Defensive Player of the Year, a 7'5" alien who led the league in blocks and contested shots and opponent field goal percentage. He had the Wolves believing they'd found something. Wemby had 33 minutes to remind them they hadn't found anything at all. The Naz Reid technical was the test. The one personal foul was the answer. If it stopped there, this would have still been a great game. But the actual blowout, the 29-point margin, needed a third ingredient. And it's the part of this story that getting completely lost in the highlight reels. Game 4 had a wrinkle that nobody really wants to talk about. After Wemby got ejected, the Spurs actually fought. They led by 8 in the fourth quarter without their best player. They didn't collapse the second he walked off. They made Minnesota close out a real game, but they still lost. Anthony Edwards scored 16 in the fourth. Gobert and Reed made plays at the rim. Dosunmu attacked the heart of a Wemby-less defense and got a key and one. Chris Finch said after the game, "We've got to make those small plays, those dirty plays." And that quote tells you exactly what Minnesota's identity is this series. They're not trying to win pretty, they're trying to win ugly, physical, gritty, late game execution. And in Game 4, the Spurs supporting cast couldn't get over the hump without Wemby. So Game 5 wasn't just about him. He set the tone. But for this to actually become a 29-point win, for the reminder to really land, the rest of the roster had to do their part, and they did. Keldon Johnson came off the bench, 21 points on 8 of 11. That's a guy stepping into the moment and loving it. De'Aaron Fox put up 18 and 5, quiet and efficient. Didn't try to do too much. Stephon Castle had 17 on 8 of 11 with 6 assists. He's been getting better and better as the series goes on, and he's playing like a guy who isn't afraid of the moment. Then there's Dylan Harper, 12 and 10 in 25 minutes and making grown man plays a rookie has no business making.
It's his fifth for Spur with 5.
Whoa! That young kid is going to be a star. He looked like his dad on that highlight tape we showed earlier.
But the real number, the one that defined the night more than any individual performance, was points in the paint. Spurs 68, Wolves 36. The Timberwolves built their entire defensive identity around protecting the paint. Rudy Gobert is a 4-time Defensive Player of the Year. Naz Reid is one of the best mobile bigs in the league. McDaniels is a switchable wing who can defend up. That team got beat 68-36 in the paint. And that's not a Wemby stat, that's a team stat. That's everybody attacking the rim, finishing through contact, crashing the offensive glass, getting downhill in transition. And here's the part that should worry Minnesota most. They had a real run. Third quarter, they opened the half on a 14-2 burst and tied the game they'd been down 18 in at one point. That's the moment a young team typically folds. Inexperienced rosters lose those moments. The Spurs are the youngest playoff team left, but they didn't fold. Keldon Johnson blocked Gobert at the rim, then bodied Edwards under the basket and hit a short jumper. The Spurs answered Minnesota's physical surge with their own.
There's Randall popping free. Quarter pitch, Shannon. Off the bench, can't hit Gobert. Johnson! Off Gobert!
That's a team learning. That's a team that absorbed the Game 4 lesson and decided they weren't going to let Minnesota close another game that way. Wemby reminded the Wolves who he is. The Spurs reminded them who they are. Those two reminders together are why this thing was over by the fourth quarter. So where does that leave us heading into Game 6? Minnesota has a real problem now. You usually get 2 or 3 real ideas. The Wolves' first idea was physicality, and Wemby handled it in 3 out of 5 games. Their second idea was breaking him emotionally, and that worked exactly once. They don't have a third idea ready, not yet anyway. And Wemby just gave them 72 hours to find one. 27 points, 17 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 blocks, and 1 foul. That's not a stat line that happens by accident. That's a stat line that happens when a player has decided he's not going to give the opponent the thing they want most, which is the whole point of calling this a reminder instead of a message. Messages are loud. Messages are for the cameras. Reminders are quieter. They're for the opponent and they linger. The whole Minnesota roster is going to walk into Game 6 carrying the memory of getting beat by 29 in a game where their best defensive plan turned into their worst nightmare. That's a reminder. If you're a Spurs fan right now, the only thing you should be thinking about is closing it out, because this is a team that's already moved past needing to prove they belong. They had a top 3 defense in the league this year. They went 62-20. They didn't sneak into this series, they earned it. Game 6 is in Minneapolis. The crowd is going to be loud. The Wolves are going to come out swinging. The Spurs are going to need everything they got plus a little bit more. But if they get it, this thing is over. Western Conference Finals. First trip since the Kawhi era, a 22-year-old leading the way. I want to know what you think. Is Game 5 the kind of performance that closes out a series? Or do the Wolves have one more answer in them? Drop your Game 6 prediction in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, hit the like and hype buttons, subscribe for more videos like this one, and check out one of these videos on your screen now.